All right. Looks like everything's working. I think my camera, I think we're good. I think we'll start it here. So let me get disclaimers out of the way. We'll jump right into it. This is the weekly live broadcast, Thursday evening, 7 o'clock Central, pretty much every Thursday evening. You can come in here. You can get your questions answered. You can just chat with us about whatever you want to chat about. It's pretty much fair game, whatever. I mean, we'll talk religion, we'll talk politics, we'll talk whatever you want to talk about. The only things I ask is be polite, keep it family friendly, don't be hateful with anybody. We can have, a good debate. We can have differences of opinions. That's no reason to hate anybody or anything like that. So those are the things I ask is just be polite and all that. We don't have to kick anybody out. So chat's pretty active already. I got a lot to get started with here. We got Don here from South Central Illinois. Good to see you, Don. Thank you for joining us. We got Woodtick here from Chile. Good evening from Chile, Central Florida. How chilly is Central Florida right now? I'm kind of curious because I think your idea of chili may be different than the rest of us, but you never know. Chester Hickman says, good evening. Good to see you too, Chester. Ed Got Bates here. Says, hey, Chris and Verna, hope either of you didn't get too much snow. Well, not yet. I mean, it's snowing right now. So, I think we're expected to get like 3 to 5 inches, somewhere right around in there overnight. I don't know how much we'll end up with. We'll see. We had some snow the other day, but it wasn't much more than just a dusting. It was less than an inch. It wasn't much at all. Joy Guthrie from Western Oregon. Good to see you. Don says it's 20 degrees real feel, 13 and another round of snow. Oh, the real feel is 13, so the wind chill is 13. Okay, gotcha. And another round of snow predicted tonight, like 9 plus. Wasn't good enough here in South Central Illinois. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of snow, so hang in there. And then goes on to say the USPS have been holding all my mail and deliveries over in St. Louis since 1/4. Just got another notice with another item that just hit St. Louis. What extreme weather is there now? It's only an hour away. Time to switch to places that use only UPS. Yeah, well, and here's the other. USPS was closed today, I think, because government facilities were all shut down because of Jimmy Carter's funeral. Which, by the way, speaking of him for a minute, I just want to say, I don't think he was a very good president at all, but man, he was a great person, it seems like. Everything I know about him, he just seemed to be like a really good man. Married for 77 years, I think they said. That's incredible. Made it to 100 years old. I think he started, if not, he had a big hand in Habitat for Humanity. So just a good humanitarian, good person. Terrible president, but, good person. So anyhow, rest his soul. I know he's in a better place. Let's see. There's Verna. Says, hey, Chris. Good to see you, Verna. Verna's saying, Ed, it looks like bad weather's heading your way. Be careful, my friend. Yeah, no kidding. We got Emma Ball here. Says hello to everybody. Hello to you. Let's see what else we got here. We got a bunch of people talking to each other, which I'll jump over. But Dave says, let's see. David Lister says 6 inches of white stuff on the ground here in East Central Oklahoma. Yeah, I think that thing that hits you is heading our way. I think most of it, the worst of it's going to be south of us, which is a little odd, but it's going to be south of us. But like I said, we're expecting about 3 to 5 inches. So we'll see. Yeah, 6 inches is a lot for Central Oklahoma. That doesn't happen a whole lot. We're pretty much the same, weather, I think. We don't get a lot of snow. We do have every once in a while, we'll get 15 inches or something like that, but it's pretty rare. It's actually been several years since we've had a decent snowfall. So I don't know. I kind of like the snow, actually. As long as my wife doesn't have to drive to work. I don't mind driving in it, but I don't want her to have to do it, but she probably will. She'll probably have to. Joe Sandy says, hey, everybody, Sandy here from Southeast Michigan. I haven't been here in several weeks. Missed everybody. We missed you too. Thank you for joining tonight. Jimbo Slice, good to see you, says, good evening, buddy. Well, good evening to you too. We got here. Warchild's here. Hello to you. Caesar says, hey, everybody, how's the cold treating you guys? Well, it's doing okay. Not bad for me, actually. I'm kind of acclimated to it now. It was actually a little warmer today than it has been. It's been in the 20s. My Tamuk doe, this morning when I went out there, she had one baby in the nest box, not very much fur pulled, just a little bit, but it was just one. And I thought, well, hopefully she's going to have more. Well, when I got home tonight, she hadn't had any more, and I lost the one. It got somehow it's uncovered and it got pushed to the front of the nest box. She's a first time mom. I think she was just a little overexcited. It was probably in there digging around or something, pushed it out from underneath all the fur and whatnot, and I lost it. But she may have more. I don't know. She's first time mom. There's a chance she'll have more. We'll see. Who's this? Brooke Vaughn from South Carolina. Good evening to you. Good to see you. Emma Ball says, good evening, Chris. I thought I already said hi to you, but it's okay. I will say hi again. Good to see you. Peter is that Falco? I don't know how to pronounce your last name. I'm not sure if I got it right or not. But anyway, says, what's up, brother? Well, not much, really. Just hanging out with you guys for an hour tonight. Let's see. We got, what else? Woodtick says it's 43 outside right now. Yeah, I think it's probably like 30 degrees out right now, maybe just a little bit below that. I think it's getting colder, but it was actually like 34 or 35 degrees today. I think it got up to 34-ish, roughly. Steve Sadnick from northern Wisconsin, good to see you. Verna says we got 8 inches last round, 5 to 8 inches forecasted for tomorrow evening. Ugh. Woodtick says we got frost 2 nights ago. Yeah, we've been well past frost here. We've had some hard freezes. It's been cold. Let's see. Mark Eastland says, I measured our icicle today 2 feet long, so we had 2 foot of ice. Yeah, I know how that goes. Caesar says it's 25 degrees here in New Jersey, and it feels like 5. Yeah, a little colder than it is here. We've been there. I mean, it's been about that temperature here the last week, but it warmed up a little today. And it's surprising how much of a difference there is between 20 degrees and 30 to 35 degrees, Steve says very chilly, but we do not have any snow on the ground, maybe Sunday. The snow, to me, does kind of help take the bitterness out of the cold. It makes it a little bit more tolerable. I don't know why. Maybe it's just a moisture in the air or something like that, but it does help. Jimbo says, been watching the news about the wildfires in California. Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, that's bad. I've been watching that too. I've been seeing little bits and pieces of it, and it's really bad. Praying for all those there. See, Andy Dundas, I think it is, says, hey, everybody from Southwest Michigan, 20 inches. And we didn't get hardly any snow. Oh, 20 degrees. I thought it was 20 inches of snow and didn't get hardly any. I was like, you got to be kidding me. 20 inches, even for Michigan, 20 inches would be a lot. But no, 20 degrees and hardly any snow. Tony, hard last name. I don't remember how to pronounce it. Says, hi from Toronto. Good to see you, Tony. Thanks for joining us. Let's see. Big Beaver Slayer says, just built our hutch design and moved in 30 jumbo chicks last night. They sure seemed to like it. The rabbits were really interested in all the activity of the new quail. Yeah, I imagine they wanted to see what was going on. Hopefully, you built the hutch design. Well, hopefully it works out well for you. It's worked out well for me. And, like you said, they seem to like it. So good. Let's see. David Lister says, 42 3-week-old quail in the brooder. I'm waiting for Sunday to move them to the quail hut. Yeah, 3 weeks old, they're pretty ready to. I mean, Sunday's probably a good bet. Go ahead and do it. I'm sure they'll do just fine. I'm sure you've weaned them off the heat already. So good luck. Hopefully that all goes well. 42 of them. That's a nice big bunch. And as active as the chat was, now it's just suddenly slowed down and almost stopped. I don't have anything great to share with you guys. I didn't get a video out this week. I just got tied up with some other things going on and just didn't get it done. Sorry. I'll try to get one out this weekend. Let's see how we're doing. Kiona says, my American chinchilla doe is due tomorrow. I'm hoping the snow here in Middle Tennessee softens the bitter cold we've been having. Yeah, I said I lost the one rabbit the one baby that my doe had. I lost it. Chances are that's mostly because, like I said, she's a first-time mom, so she didn't really, do the best job of nesting. She did have the baby in the nest box, which is good. But I think the biggest reason is, she only had the one. If there were multiple and they had been all kind of snuggled together, it probably would have been just fine. But, just the one didn't work out. I've had really good luck having baby rabbits, even, no matter how cold it is. I've had really good luck with that. But, first time moms, you never know. So good luck with yours. I hope it goes well. Joe Sandy says, Chris, I know you've had many, many types of pets over the years. Have you ever had a leopard gecko? If so, I have a question. Well, I used to have a lot of reptiles. I don't think I ever had a leopard gecko necessarily, but ask your question. I may be able to answer it. But I used to, this was when I was much younger, but I really wanted, that was kind of a field I was thinking about going into, was herpetology. So I know quite a bit about reptiles, so I may be able to help you out with that. We'll see. Jimbo Slice has been trying to clean the barn for 2 weeks now. Just been too dang cold. Man, I know what you mean. I've got a bunch of, a tree down that I've got to get cut up. And, I'd honestly rather be out there working in like 25-degree weather than 90-degree weather, but it's still just a little bit too cold to get out there and do it. Emma said, let's see, did something new for the first time this year, Chris, to add to my arsenal, and had my first roe deer to skin and butcher. Super proud of myself. Do you have game where you are? Yeah. I don't know. Roe deer, I'm not super familiar with. We have whitetail, and I do deer hunt. I did not get a deer this year, which is odd. I usually do, but it was actually the worst season I've had in, good grief, probably 10 years or so. It's been a long time since I've had a season that was this rough. I saw one, like, first day I went out, it was bow season. It was like September, late September. It was real early in the season. Saw one buck that came in, and he was just not, he wasn't tiny, but he wasn't quite big enough. And I thought, well, if it had been the last day of the season, I'd have shot him for sure. He was big enough, that it would work, but I wanted to let him grow and, spread his seed, and all that kind of stuff first. So first day of the season, I let him pass. And I didn't see another one anywhere near. I saw a couple of does way off in the distance the whole rest of the season, and I was hunting pretty hard. But, that's why they call it hunting, not shooting. Caesar says, I lost one of my quail due to a hawk keep coming by and harassing the birds. So, it didn't necessarily get the bird, but you're saying like the stress basically got the bird is what you're saying. I've never seen that actually happen with my quail. I've had some predators come by, but I haven't had, I don't know that I've had really consistent predator pressure on them to really cause that much of an issue. But I'm sorry that happened, man. That's unfortunate. Uh-oh. David Lister says, my snow bunny berry comment came back and bit me. How's that? I'm kind of curious. He had a, well, let's see if I can find it real quick. I'll find well, I don't know if we need to. It probably won't show up if I show it on my phone anyway, but maybe. I don't know if I can find it to show everybody, but I know what you're talking about. It was somebody built a snowman, but a snow bunny, and he was talking about the berries building up behind it. So we'll see what the rest of that story is. Joe Sandy says, I have a 4-year-old leopard gecko. She's always been healthy, sheds normally, etc., but she had an abnormal shed 2 days ago. And then there'll be more to this. We'll see. Jimbo says, got a squirrel in the refrigerator ready for the crock pot in the morning. I do like some squirrel. It's been a while since I've done any squirrel hunting, but yeah, squirrel's pretty good. I like it. Joyce says, my son got his cow elk today, special hunting tag. Love me some elk burger. I don't know if I've ever eaten elk or not, but yeah, why not? Hello, Governor says, hello. How long is too long to rebreed a doe? Are there any effects for long waits? Well, there could be. If you go like years, I don't know what the cutoff would be, but if you go years without, there's a chance that they, get too much fat around their ovaries and that kind of stuff, and it could infect their breeding, or they could age out, of course. But I think that would take a while. If you're talking, I would try to get them bred at least once a year. I don't think I'd go much further out than that. But it doesn't hurt to just try. If it's been a while, why not give it a try? Caesar says, maybe she got scared and jumped up. Yeah, it could be. Very well could be. I've never had a bird, flush and break their neck or anything like that. That's kind of a little bit of a misnomer. You hear about it all the time, but it's not really something that happens. But it could have. It's a possibility. 340 Quail Farm says, hey, Chris, Central Florida checking in. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us tonight. Let's see. Joe Sandy says, okay, here's the end of it. I guess I didn't intervene soon enough. I soaked her in warm water, assisted getting all the shed off, but 3 of her ankles or feet are severely swollen. Circulation must have been cut off. Yeah, that's interesting. Severely swollen. You said a 4-year-old leopard gecko, right? 4 years old? Let me look back and see what it is. 4-year-old. Yeah, that's fairly old for a leopard gecko. And then we'll see what else is it. She's dragging one hind leg. I'm hoping the circulation will come back and she doesn't lose anything. Yeah, I guess your question is like, what do you do for her? I don't know that there's a whole lot you can do for her other than just kind of leave her alone. You know, I mean, I don't know that there's a whole lot else you can do for her. You did the right thing. You know, I was going to say you were having a hard time getting her to shed. Well, yeah, soaking in warm water, that can help. But I've never seen one that actually, I've never had an issue. I've had issues with reptiles that didn't shed real well. Same kind of thing. You just get some warm water, kind of soak a little bit, help them assist with that. I'm hoping that this is going to be, I think it's probably going to be a temporary thing and she'll probably recover for it. I don't know that there's really much you can do to help her along other than just leaving her alone. The stress of trying to help her might do worse harm than just leaving her alone and letting her recover. Verna says, Chris, fed my daughter and grandson fried rabbit the other day. They loved it, had baked taters and broccoli with it. Yeah, I'm not actually a fan of fried rabbit that much. It's too lean to me. It doesn't seem to fry very well, but hey, they liked it, so good. I'm glad. Joe Sandy says they live longer than 4 years. I've read where they can lose toes, tails, etc., and just feel so bad I didn't intervene sooner. Well, I mean, there's not a whole lot. Let me see something here real quick. Let me make sure. Oh, yeah, I guess they can. They can go like 6 to 10 years. So that's a little older than I thought they could live. But yeah, don't feel too bad about it. I mean, there's not a whole lot you can do. I mean, you did what you could do, and you helped her out and you assisted her. So you might look into like adding some humidity or something like that and seeing if that helps, because the fact that, she had a hard time shedding is probably the low humidity. Leopard geckos kind of, I mean, they do need a little bit of a higher humidity, and that might help a little bit with that. If you have a humidifier you can put in there nearby, that might help her a little bit. I know she's already done shedding, but still the extra humidity could help. I can't remember. Let me just do a double check on that. I can't remember on leopard geckos what the humidity requirements are, but let me just do a quick search on that. Let's see what they're looking at. It says 30 to 40% in their enclosure, and you're probably, if you don't have a humidifier or something going, she has a moist hide, but with the holidays it went dry. That's on me. Okay, that's it. Yeah. Okay. Verna says it was oven fried in butter, talking about the rabbit. Well, that's the way to do it if you're going to fry a rabbit. And Joe Sandy says usually just provide a moist hide. Well, I mean, you probably, you've been keeping this gecko for, I'm guessing, the 4 years, so you're probably pretty familiar with it and how that's working. I just know that, like, when I kept reptiles, it was always wintertime, so dry here. It was really hard to keep the humidity levels up high enough, even with a moist hide. But if that's working for you, keep doing it. There's no reason. It happens. Life happens. Again, I don't know that it's anything to really, significantly worry about. I'd give her a little bit of time and see how she does. Buck Reynolds says, hello, everyone. Oklahoma here. Hope everyone is well. I'm doing well. Hopefully you are too. And Joe Sandy says, on the brighter side, took 2 quail out of the freezer today and had a delicious lunch. Well, yeah, that doesn't sound bad at all, does it? Yeah, that's definitely the brighter side for it, for sure. What's up, Max? Max is coming in here to pester me about something. What? You want me to pet you, don't you? All right, so waiting on some chats to come through. And Joe Sandy's got a quail question. Well, let's see what it is. Keona says, I thought you said road deer earlier. I get them off on roadkill, as I have a taxidermist and police friend that call me whenever they get notified of a fresh hit. A roe deer, I think is what it is. I may have said road. I don't know. Maybe it was typed road and I just read it that way. Probably a typo. But roe deer, I think is what it's called. Emma says, don't feel too bad, Joe Sandy. I hope it heals well. Yeah, indeed. I agree. Verna says, now they're only saying 2 to 4 inches tomorrow. Well, that's a little better, isn't it? Joe Sandy says, aside from the light requirements and predators, what else could cause a drop in egg production? Well, I mean, the two main things that cause drops in egg production are lack of light or some kind of stress factor. I've never noticed predators really stressing them out enough to cause, drop in egg production. Now, Verna's saying winter cold. Yeah, when you get a cold snap, like when it just suddenly gets really cold, that can kind of cause them for a little while to shut down. It's a drastic change in temperature, a drastic change in weather, and that could cause them some stress on them, cause them to shut down just a little bit. The other thing would be molting. If they start molting, they could, shut down on their egg production too. Those are primarily the things that would cause it. So if there's some kind of stress factor, you haven't been moving them around from cage to cage, that seems to stress them out more than anything for some reason. But they'll pick back up. It's usually just a temporary thing. And Joe Sandy says they get enough light, nothing out of the ordinary stress-wise. Well, I mean, sometimes they just take a break too. I mean, for whatever reason, it just happens. But usually, and you say they get enough light. I'm not sure how you're providing light to them, but I mean, it is, we just passed the winter solstice not too long ago. We're pretty short days right now. So even when you're putting light on them and, trying to keep up with the 14 hours a day, sometimes they just kind of slow down a little bit during this time of year, and they'll pick back up in a week or two. Mark says, what's the best thing to do about frozen quail eggs? I didn't take them off the lights. We get about a dozen every day. Yeah, I'm dealing with the same thing right now. Honestly, they're fine to still eat. They're not going to hatch, so don't worry about trying to do any kind of incubating with them or anything, but they're fine to still eat. I just store them in the fridge when they thaw out. Just use them like I would regular eggs, and they're fine. Usually just scramble them up because, they kind of messed up after freezing, but there's nothing wrong with them. They work just fine. I feed, my dog, we raw feed the dog, so he gets a handful of eggs every day, and he doesn't care if they're frozen or not. Verna says sudden change in temp or too cold of temp could affect the production. Yeah, more so a sudden change in temperature. I don't usually notice, it doesn't really matter how cold it is, they still produce, but a lot of times you're right, that sudden change, like we've been in the 40s and then we dropped to 20 degrees, and everything's frozen all of a sudden. That will kind of get them to slow down or maybe even shut down for a couple of days. And Joe Sandy says, I have a light on a timer. They get 15 hours a day. Yeah, I mean, if you had a drastic weather change, that may be the stress factor that's caused them to kind of shut down a little bit. But again, I'm sure they're going to pick back up. Angie says, if I put lights on them now, how long do you think it would take until I could expect eggs? I lost the comment. Where did it go? Did you take it back? So yeah, a couple of weeks. Usually if they've shut down completely, it's going to take them at least probably 2 weeks, maybe 3, before they really start laying again. It takes a little while to get going again, but you'll get them soon. Joe Sandy says they never regrown their feathers they lost last spring. They look mangy, bare backs. Strange. Yeah, that is strange too. They have them, and no roosters, huh? Well, Verna says bare backs are usually from overbreeding. Somewhat. I never noticed bare backs. I mean, the back of their head for sure, but not their backs themselves from overbreeding. I mean, I guess it's possible, but I've never noticed it. No, it sounds like a molt for whatever reason. They didn't. I mean, you may have some aggression issues, like some birds pulling feathers. I'm kind of curious. I think we've talked about this before, but what protein level is in your feed? If your protein levels are too low, a lot of times that can cause birds to start pulling feathers because feathers are pretty high in protein, and trying to get the protein that way. Angie says, do you think I could incubate them soon after they start laying? Probably. I mean, you check your fertility. If you know how to check fertility, it's not that hard. Just, get a bunch of eggs, crack them open, pour them in there, and you're looking for a little bullseye ring around that white spot in the yolk. And if your fertility is pretty good, you're ready to incubate. Usually, when they start laying eggs, I usually give them about 2 weeks before I start incubating eggs. 27% protein. Yeah, that should be high enough protein. Emma says, Annie, I'd give them about 2 weeks before incubating. Yeah, that's kind of what I do too. But Joe Sandy says 27% protein. Yeah, that should be high enough protein. I'm kind of surprised they haven't regrown their feathers. I'm not sure what else could be causing that, unless there were some issues with birds plucking feathers or something like that, because that could be causing the issue. But I don't know, honestly. It's kind of weird. Let's see. Reflejos, I think it is. Della Ora. I don't know what that is, what that means. If that's your name or if that means something. Anyway, says, hey there, everyone. I've been watching the channel for a while now. Very informative. Just wanted to say I appreciate your content. Saludos from New Jersey. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you for watching and for joining the lives. We appreciate you being here. Caesar says they might be eating feathers. It could be. They very well could be. Is that Lucido? I think it is. Says, hey, man, I've got a beautiful young tuxedo female that was hurt badly, now recovered. But now none of my flock accept her because she's so young. She's living alone. Don't want to call. Ideas? I mean, unless you want to keep her alone. When you say none of the flock wants to accept her because she's so young, how old is she? I'm kind of curious. Because, I mean, if she's breeding size, if she's like 8 weeks old, or I'd say even 6 weeks old or older, you're going to have a real hard time getting her back into the flock, because they're going to see her as new and they get territorial, and they'll probably fight with her and pick on her and, you know, beat her up pretty good. It's always hard to separate birds from the flock and then try to reintroduce them later. That causes a lot of aggression from them. If you have a way to, you know, maybe move them all to a brand new enclosure along with her, that might help a little bit. Otherwise, it's just, I mean, you may just have to put her in there and just hope for the best, you know, hope that they get through it and, you know, no issues. Turn your lights on if you have lights on them. Turn them off. Give them a week or two, a couple of weeks probably, and then you might be able to reintroduce her, because they're not in breeding mode at that point, and their aggression tends to be a little bit less. They tend to be much more aggressive whenever the roosters are crowing, the hens are laying eggs. You know, all those hormones running through their body makes them a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more territorial, and they'll be a little bit calmer whenever, you know, you do have that, you know, when they're not breeding, when they're not in breeding mode. That may help a little bit too. I'm not sure I have other great suggestions for you, other than, you know, if you don't want to call her, just keep her by herself. I mean, that's the only other things I know to do. Let's see. Joe Sandy says maybe mites. I mean, it could be. I kind of doubt it. I think you would see mites on them if it was. You know, check them over pretty closely, and you should be able to see them. But maybe, I don't know, you might try treating them for them just to see, you know, if that fixes it. And he says, thanks, everyone. I have 1 rooster and 5 hens. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. That's a good ratio. Andy says, Andy Rabbits here says, Lucido, you can try putting her in a small cage within a cage for a few days and then open the door and let her come out on her own. That's how I mix mine. Yeah, that's not a bad idea, actually. That might actually work pretty well. If you have a smaller cage, you can put in the other cage with her inside of it. You know, it keeps her protected from getting beat up while they get kind of acclimated to her being there. That might work. Joe Sandy says, I don't know why they would eat their feathers. They seem to eat constantly. I think 14 quail eat more than my 2 ducks. Yeah, quail do eat quite a bit. Emma Ball says 1 to 5 doesn't sound like any of them would be overbred. It's probably a molt. I think we're talking about 2 different things. I don't think Annie was talking about overbreeding. She was talking about like when if she puts lights on them, when they're going to start breeding, when could she incubate eggs? So I think that's not the ones that are losing feathers. I think we're getting comments mixed up a little bit there, but that's okay. Let's see what else you say. It's probably a molt. Quail are attracted to the color red, so if they have been intrigued and peck a few new feathers, that blood can attract more. Yeah, that could be it. I would be. I mean, that kind of can. I don't think that's the issue, but it could be. Who knows? Lucido says, thanks for the suggestion, Andy. Yeah, that's always good, because Yeah, that's what I like about this too, is that if I don't know everything, believe it or not. I'm not, I'm not the most expert on every little thing. And sometimes I forget things too. We always got somebody in here that can add some advice and usually fill in the gaps for me. And that's great. Joe Sandy says, is there any way to share a photo here? If so, I will do it next week. Unfortunately, there's not in the chat. There's no way to share a photo. Um, let's see. I don't know the best way to do it, but I'm not sure that would help that much anyway. I mean, you're saying they're bald on their back, but we could take a look at them and see. You can share it in the Facebook group if you're in the group. I very seldom get in there. I'm just not super active on social media at all. I don't know if I'd ever see it or not. You can try to email one to me, Chris at slightlyredneck.com, and I could take a look and see what I could see from it. But there's not a way to share one inside of the YouTube chat. All Clean Exteriors is here from Michigan. Good to see you. Verna says, sometimes if quail are eating other feathers, it could be that their protein at the time may have been low. Yeah, I was kind of making the same suggestion. But she's feeding a 27% protein. That's plenty high enough. Shouldn't have any issues from that. But yeah, that's a common. They can eat. They'll pull feathers sometimes if your protein levels are too low. And when I say too low, you're looking at below, I would say below 20%. If you're looking at 17, 16%, somewhere around in there, that may be too low and cause them to want to pull some feathers. Unless, the advertised protein level in your feed is not accurate. I don't know what kind of feed you're feeding, but Joe Sandy says, I've never changed the food and the feathers just never grew back. So I'm curious, how old are your birds? I wonder, I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but that may, if they're older. But I don't think I've ever had issues where they molted and their feathers never grew back. I've had a bird or two that is, oh, sorry, I got distracted by another comment. I've had a bird or two every once in a while that kind of seems to never really want to grow their feathers back, but it's never been a whole flock of them, just one or two. Andy Rabbit says the weather app says now weather app says snow will be starting in 10 minutes. Yeah, it started here a couple hours ago, so it's probably pretty close to you if it's not there already. Verna says also during extreme heat, they will pull their own back feathers. Somewhat, I guess. It could happen. I've never had issues with it. Joe Sandy says, I get my feed from a local grain mill. Some birds are almost a year old. The others are about 8 months. Well, they're not too old then, so I just don't know. It's an anomaly. It's a weird thing. Sounds like you just got freaky birds for some reason or another. Lucido says, since I have you here, my man, I have 4 flocks, and there's one flock who just doesn't eat anything besides their pellets. My flocks are strange. I'm not sure what you mean exactly. What else are they supposed to be eating? I don't know exactly where you're going. Cesar Reyes says, I had that problem in the past. Is the breed. I ordered eggs from My Shire Farm, and I don't have that problem anymore. It could be. It could be a genetic thing. I don't know. Andy Rabbit says, you don't have to change the feed. The feed mills might change it sometimes. The ingredients don't have to be the same. Just the specific needs to be the same. So, yeah, talking about the feed from the feed store, I don't think it's a feed issue. But it could be. It could be, but I don't think it is. Emma Ball says it could be a genetic issue and could be related to the barb structure. Pips and Chicks has a lot of info on genetics and will happily answer your question. Well, there you go. There's another resource for you, too. So, yeah, I'm kind of leaning more towards it could be a genetic issue of some kind. If you're talking, these birds are, you said some of them are almost a year old. Let me read that again. Some birds are almost a year old. The others are about 8 months old. And you said they lost their feathers back in the spring, summer, and never grew back. So that leads me more to thinking it's a genetic issue. They shouldn't be molting that early anyway. So they shouldn't have molted at, they were only, a month or two old at that time. That's pretty early for a molt. So I would say, I'm leaning more towards genetics. That kind of seems to be the case for me. Let me see something real quick. Let's see. Yeah, there is a gene that can be a defective feather gene that it's a mutation that causes defective feathers. Oh, and this is saying, I don't know about this one. This one's saying constant lighting can cause that, but you're not doing constant lighting. You've got it on a timer, so that's probably not the issue. The thought is constant light could get them agitated because they never get a break from the light, and then they may start picking feathers and things like that. But yeah, amino acid deficiency. Hmm. Okay, so similar to a protein deficiency, they're saying acid deficiency could cause birds to eat feathers to satisfy their cravings for amino acid. I don't know. I've never really looked into the amino acid. Oh, and then look, there's a whole bunch of my videos came up in that search too, but I didn't cover those things in there. I mean, mites is another thing, but I wouldn't think mites is the issue. Viral or bacterial infections. I'm leaning more towards. I mean, you could check their amino acid levels in their feed and see if there's anything. Um, uh, so those are my Shire birds. What breed are they? Do you know? Anyway, let's see. Reflejo says, thank you. I have New Zealand rabbits for a while now, but rabbits in general since I was little. My grandfather used to raise them in Cuba for meat along with other animals, and it stuck with me. Well, that's not bad at all. I like the New Zealand's. They're pretty good meat rabbits, so you got some good choice there. Okay, so Jay Sandy's saying they are my Shire eggs, and I've had extreme aggression problems with most of them, but I'm not saying they're related. It could be related to that. And you said mixed feather sexable variety, huh? All right, Emma Bell says Rebecca Lynch at Thieving Otter Farm had some bald quail and she was trying to breed them, but all ended up infertile. If you're close to her, you may want to reach out to her too. Maybe, I don't know, that might be something. Verna says, Sandy, the aggression issue you had could be the root of your problem. It could be. And Joe Sandy says, I'll have to check into the amino acid supplement. Don't know that the label tells me. Yeah, I'm not sure if it does either. I've never really looked at amino acid on there. Nick says, thank you for the Do More Cage review. Yeah, you're absolutely welcome. So, Joe Sandy, I wish I could answer your question for you, but this one's got me a little bit stumped. I mean, my Shire is a good supplier, so I wouldn't really think. And I'm wondering if it's not related to them picking feathers. I mean, there's two things that are kind of leading me to think it's probably either genetic issue or the aggression thing. They're picking feathers for some reason or another. Nick says, let's see, I ended up getting 4 tamuks, 3 does, and a buck for $120. I plan to get another unrelated buck later this year. There'll be a few months before I can breed them, but I'm happy with them so far. Awesome. Good to hear that. So, yeah, I haven't got mine I did breed my tamuks. I've got 2, a buck and a doe. Breeding went great. No problems. She's due like yesterday, today. So yes, this morning when I went out there, she had the one baby rabbit. I've already told this story, but just in case you weren't here, she had the one baby rabbit so far. So I kind of left her alone. She had it in the nest box. It was a pretty good sized kit. I was a little concerned about that, but pretty good sized kit. I left her alone with it, but I lost it. I came back this evening. She hasn't had any more. The nest was kind of torn apart a little bit, like the baby was pushed all the way to the front of the cage when I got home, or the front of the nest box, and the fur was kind of all spread out to the side. She didn't pull a whole ton of fur either. But I lost it because it's so cold out right now, and it was only one baby uncovered. So lost it, unfortunately. She may have more. I don't know. We'll see. Joe Sandy says, it's okay, Chris. We discussed it before, and we came up empty. Yeah, it's pretty much. And you said it just bugs me. Yeah, it bugged me too. Verna's saying the best time I can breed or the best time to breed, talking to Nick, is wintertime. Well, I agree, but at the same time, I don't think it's, yeah, he says they're only 12 weeks old at the moment. Yeah, I don't think he was holding off for weather. I think it was they age, and that's what it looks like. Chris Huey says hello. Hello to you. Good to see you. He says they're only 12 weeks old. Nick says they're only 12 weeks old at the moment, so I have to wait until they're old enough. But I do agree with winter breeding. Yeah, I agree too. But I will say this about Tamucks. I mean, Tamucks were developed to be heat tolerant, so there's no reason you shouldn't necessarily try to breed them in the summer too, if you want to. There's no reason not to, because they are. I mean, that's the whole thing about Tamucks, is they're bred to be a heat tolerant rabbit that can be bred in the summertime. Let's see what else we got here. Joe Sandy says, I'm thinking of starting over this spring. Thought about trying Thieving Otter Farms. I've heard they concentrate on breeding calm quail. Maybe. I mean, my birds are from my Shire farm. Now, I raise jumbo pharaohs. I don't mess with any of the other colors or anything, but jumbo pharaohs, and I've always had really good luck with those being pretty calm. It seems to me like when you get into some of the other color mutations and things like that, that it just seems to kind of come along with, aggression. So, Emma says, I agree with Chris, either picking from other birds or a bad bunch of genetics. I would probably start over again with new birds and see if the same thing happens. Could be food or environment. But I'd rule out genetics before incubating more from that group. Joe Sandy says, I'm sorry about your bunny, Chris. Hey, it happens. It's just part of raising animals. It's just something you got to deal with from time to time. It's unfortunate, but, I'll rebreed her. We'll see how it goes. Buck Reynolds says, I breed my rabbits year round. Yeah, I'm not sure. Where do you live exactly? I mean, not exactly, but, what part of the world do you live in? What's your climate like there? I don't breed in the summer because, when it's over 100 degrees out, it just seems rude to, breed a rabbit that's wearing a big fur coat. I just don't do it usually. But I may do it. I don't know. I may try the Tamucks this summer and see. Oh, you're in Tulsa. You're the same weather as me. So, yeah, there you go. Maybe you can. I always just feel bad for them. They seem to be struggling so much in the 100-degree weather anyway. I don't want to add, breeding to it, but hey, we'll see. But, let's see, we got this from my wife sent me an attachment of something. Let's see if it's anything worth. Oh, yeah, most insane whitetail deer ever caught on camera. Good grief. Yeah, that is crazy. Oh, look, I don't know if you guys can see that or not. Look at that thing. It's probably not focusing on it. Yeah, that's a not a natural deer. That's not a natural deer at all. Emma says, do you do anything with your rabbit skins, Chris? Nah, I really don't. I've thought about tanning them out, but I haven't. I've never really done it. I may at some point. It's just, to me, it's not usually worth it. I mean, when I'm processing rabbits, they're young and their furs are kind of, the skins are pretty thin, so they're not really good for a whole lot. But hey, I mean, there's no reason not to. Don says, isn't 100 degrees weather too hot for newborn rabbits? I mean, it's pretty warm, but I don't know if it's too hot. And that's the thing. Again, the Tamucks are supposed to be bred to be heat tolerant, so they're supposed to be able to handle it. Joe Sandy says, my gosh, how can you hold his head up? Yeah, no kidding. Andy says, I would rather breed to keep a breeder rabbit in the warmer months of the year. So, yeah, the thought being that if they're born in the warmer months, they're more heat tolerant anyway. Maybe. I don't know. And like I said, I mean, the Tamucks, that's the whole point, right? They're supposed to be heat tolerant to breed all year round. And they were bred, they were kind of created, I guess, in Texas where it gets really hot, stays hot a lot of the year. So I don't know. I guess it's fine. It's more my hang up than theirs, I suppose. I don't know. All right. What else we getting at here? Waiting on other comments to come through. We'll see. Joe Sandy says, my eggs have been cracking sometimes within a couple of hours. I eat them anyway. Yeah, in the, I don't know how cold it is there, but yeah, as cold as it is here, for sure they crack. I mean, when they freeze, they crack. And that does bring up a point. They won't last as long. Once they've cracked, I mean, you got to use them up pretty quick or they they're going to go bad, but they're fine to eat. There's nothing wrong with them. Don says, Andy Rabbit, do you know if it is okay for the newborns too, or do you just lose more than those that survive are tougher? Oh, you're talking about breeding in the heat of summer, huh? Well, I got something wrong with my mouse here. Oh, there was a hair underneath there. Dog hair. I think that's it. Let's see where we're at here. I lost track. Emma says, how many meals can you get from a rabbit? Well, I guess it kind of depends on the size of the rabbit and how much you're, gonna how much you eat and what else you have with it. Usually, I'm looking at probably 3 meals roughly out of one rabbit. But, then again, if you cook the whole thing whole and then shred it up, you can stretch it out even further. Depending on how you're serving it, what you're serving it with. Nick says, I am fortunate enough to be raising my rabbits in a rack style system in my barn with chickens. The barn has power, so I'll be able to run fans on them this summer. Yeah, that's not a bad deal. Andy says, in my opinion, winter breeding rabbits are for eating only. Interesting. I'm not sure why that would be. Joe Sandy says, right, then I eat them the next day, talking about the cracked eggs. And Andy says, no, I don't lose many in the summer. Buck says, I got purebred New Zealand, sell to some restaurants here. Nice. What kind of regulations do you have to go through the restaurants? I think we've talked about this before. You just have them processed by a processor, right? You can't do it yourself at home, I guess. Andy says, I lose more baby rabbits in the winter. I'm actually the other way around. I've not done a lot of breeding in the summertime, but the heat seems to be worse to me than the cold. I mean, I don't lose very many babies in wintertime at all. Chris says, in Tennessee, everyone breeds year round. Nice. Joe Sandy says, do domestic rabbits taste like wild ones? All I can remember is buckshot. Yeah. No, they're not the same as wild rabbits. They're very lean, it's like white meat, very lean white meat, basically, is what it is. Whereas wild rabbits are, well, for lack of a better term, more gamey, I guess, have more flavor to them, a little bit gamier. But no, they're not the same at all. Andy Rabbit says, a winterborn rabbit is not a heat-tolerant rabbit. Well, it could be. Refleo says, hey, hello, Andy. That's interesting. What do you mean by winter breeding rabbits are for eating only? Well, I think that's what she's saying, is that she doesn't want to keep them for breeders because if you're born in the winter, they're not heat tolerant. I don't know if there's truth to that or not. I mean, I can see the logic behind it. Maybe. I don't know that I've had any experience with my rabbits born in winter doing any worse than my other rabbits as far as heat tolerance goes, but maybe. I don't know. Joe Sandy says, between squirrel and rabbit growing up, I probably consumed a lot of lead. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, I've eaten a lot of squirrel and rabbit in my lifetime as well. Verna says, Sandy, no, a wild rabbit tastes differently. It does have the wild taste, whereas domestic rabbits do not. Yeah, Buck Reynolds says USDA processing in order to sell to the restaurants. I mean, how much? I'm kind of curious. Is that worth it? I mean, it just seems like there'd be a lot of costs tied up with USDA processing that you'd have to sell it for so much to make it worth selling to the restaurants. Maybe I'm wrong. And, don't answer if you don't want to. It's okay. But it does seem like it might be difficult. Let's see. Joe Sandy said, like chicken breast. Yeah, kind of. It's, I don't know. It's even leaner, I think, than chicken breast usually. So you do have problems with it drying out if you're not careful. That's why I don't like to fry it, because it tends to be kind of dried out in that sense. But yeah, sorry, I got distracted by another comment. So yeah, it is similar to chicken breast, though. You could serve it as chicken, and nobody would know the difference unless it was like a rabbit leg, because that doesn't look at all like a chicken leg. But you know what I'm saying? You could pass it off as chicken breast, and people would believe it. Emma says, I had grass-fed cow recently, and I hated it. It actually tastes like I was grazing myself. Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean. Grass-fed cows not always the best. Andy Rabbit says, I found my summer-born bucks seem to not go heat sterile as fast. I've actually never had an issue with heat sterility in my rabbits. I mean, I know it's a thing, but I've never had any of them have problems with it. Buck says heat tolerance is genetics. That's kind of the opinion I'm of, but I may be wrong. Um, Andy says heat tolerance is bred into them. And Joe Sandy says it does taste different. Yeah, talking about the grass-fed beef, I think is what you're saying. Yeah. Buck Reynolds says it's $4, get 20. Oh, so it costs you $4 to process it, and you're selling it to the restaurant for $20. That's a pretty good deal. I'd do that. Let's see. Andy Rabbit says heat tolerance can also be bred out of them within a couple of generations. Interesting. Emma says, I like the gamey flavor, but this was something else. Talking about the grass-fed beef. Yeah. Yeah, I think you want a little more fat on them than that. Feed them some grain and stuff. Get them fattened up, right? Interesting. And the chat has slowed down again, so I'm left with nothing to talk about. Did you guys see my new shirt? I don't know if I showed this one off or not. The Flores Lava Championship from Pompeii, Italy, AD 79, October 24th, 79 AD. I'm reading it backwards in the camera, but yeah, you get the idea, right? Joe Sandy says, just eat a plate of grass, save $10 a pound. No kidding. Verna says, somebody didn't know how to finish their cows. Well, I mean, that's kind of all the rage right now, isn't it? Grass-fed. I mean, that's the health craze right now. Nick says, for anyone wondering, the Rack and House is the Joe Salatin system where you run your rabbit cages in a chicken coop. Helps to keep it clean under their cages with the chicken scratching, in my opinion. Yeah, I'm familiar with what it is, and it looks like a pretty good setup. Emma says, do you guys have pheasant there? Not really. I don't know if there's a wild population of pheasant in Missouri or not, but I've never seen them. Chris says, let's see, Chris Heitztuman, hard name to pronounce for me, says, for those of you who do colony rabbits but still want to maintain good breeding control, do people use a spiral or clan mating system with multiple colonies with single bucks? I couldn't tell you. I don't do colony in rabbits. I just don't do it. I couldn't answer that one for you, unfortunately. We'll see if somebody else has experience with it, maybe. Andy says, I didn't like the grass-fed beef I had either. It was pretty bland to me. Yeah, that's been my experience with it, too. It's not that it tastes like grass. I mean, just bland. It just didn't have much flavor at all. Joe Sandy says, Nick, I just caught in onto your name. Love it. Oh, okay. Is that supposed to be like Nicodemus, basically? Interesting. Andy Rabbit says, I keep my rabbits in their own cages. Yeah, that's what I do too. Buck Reynolds says, but when I started, I give them some to try. Going to do the same thing with quail. What are we talking about? I'm lost on that one. I'm looking back up to see. I can't figure it out. I don't know. Vernon wants to know, Larry, are you in the storm's pathway? And Chris Huey says, just started quail and it's coming along. Well, good. Yeah, quail aren't that hard, so hopefully that's working. Glad to hear it. So Nick says, let's see, Vay's place. I have a very secure chicken coop with welded wire and 2 strands of electric fencing around it. Why not keep my rabbits in it where they are safe as well? It's like a bunny Fort Knox. Well, yeah, I mean, you can definitely do it. I mean, give it a try. I personally, I just don't do colonies. I just like to have them caged up. Um, I think it works better for me. But I mean, rabbits are not really herd animals anyway. They're typically, I mean, they're kind of solitary in my experience. But I don't know. Try it and see. And Nick says, yes, it is Nicodemus from the Bible, but I got it from an old baseball coach that used to call me that in school. Well, nice. Had a good a guy that, well, his son was in my son's scout troop, and him and I were assistant scoutmasters in the troop together. And his last name was Nicodemus, and still is. But his son got killed senior year of high school. Just, I mean, he was a great kid, just all around good kid. Eagle Scout. He was kind of a jock, kind of a sports guy and a jock, but it was just super friendly with everybody. He would show up at school with donuts and sit on his tailgate and give donuts out to the other kids and pray with them and all those kinds of things. I mean, just a good all around kid. And he was at it was like a grade school, middle school thing, basketball, something or other. I don't know what he was doing, but he was like playing basketball and jumped up and slammed the ball. Well, the basketball goal started to fall. He pushed a kid out of the way and it landed on him, and he ended up dying from that. So anyway, sad story. Didn't mean to bring that up, but again, I mean, just a great kid. Last name Nicodemus. So, Chris says, hatching my eggs and waiting on eggs. Gotta LOL. Waiting for the eggs to hatch. Yeah, it's always a little nerve-wracking, isn't it? Yeah, Verna's taken off. Good to see you, Verna. Hopefully you have a good rest of your evening. Joe Sandy says, I love the Chosen episode with Nicodemus. The Chosen's a good show anyway. I mean, I think even if you're not a Christian, you probably would like that show. It's well done. I mean, really well done. I don't know when the next season's coming out. I need to see where we're at on that, caught up on it. I think, anyway, we'll talk about that later, I guess. But 20 War Child says, let's see, what trees' leaves are best or can be used as forage for rabbits? Excuse me. Piece of dust or something in my throat. Boy, there's a whole bunch of them. I don't know that I can name them because we only got like a minute or two left. But there's quite a few. Your best bet is probably just do a Google search and look it up and find out which ones you can use. Almost any of them, honestly, are going to be okay. It's probably easier to say which ones not to feed them than it would be to look up which ones to feed them. But there's a ton of them that are fine for them. We have red buds here, so I tend to give them red bud branches to chew on. I don't really give them like leaves to forage or anything necessarily, but I give them red bud branches to have chew toys. Cottonwood is fine. I had the cottonwood tree that fell, so I had plenty of that. So I've thrown some of that in their cages, but there's a lot of different trees that are just fine for them. Emma says, you'll need to dig some feet down all the way into the ground to keep them in and the foxes out for colony breeding. They will burrow to breed if outdoors. Yeah, that's true. They do dig. So yeah, you'll need to make sure that you have a pretty deep fence running to keep them in. Keep foxes out. You might do like electric wire, just run a strand of that around the outside, and that should do that. Nick says, the rabbits are in cages, and the cages are just inside the very secure chicken coop. I don't like the idea of colonies either. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Buck Reynolds says, give the restrictions some rabbits to start with. What? Give the restrictions some rabbits to start with? I don't know what you're saying. Chris says, yes, it's something. I'm lost on that too. I'm not sure. Oh, waiting on eggs is something. Yeah, I know what you mean. Rabbit Homesteading says, mulberry, I think, is one, but check in case I'm wrong, LOL. No, mulberry, I think, is fine too. I think you're right. Rabbit Homesteading says, I know mulberry is safe, just not sure if best. I don't know if there's anything, any such thing as best necessarily. As long as it's safe, you can feed it to them. All right, we're out of time. Let me jump to one or two more comments here, and then we'll wrap this one up. We got Andy Rabbit says, the reason I don't do colony is it gets muddy. When they dig their babies into the ground, they can flood. Yep. And I can't watch or count the babies. I agree. I don't know if anything goes wrong in the nest. Yep, I agree. Andy Rabbit says, and can't tell what mother had the babies. Yep, those are all good reasons in my opinion too. Buck Reynolds says, restaurant. What are we saying? Oh, give the restaurant some rabbits to start with. Oh, okay. So basically to get it going, get them interested. So, George says, anybody watch Landman is any good? I saw the advertisement. It looks good. Andy Rabbit says, love it. And I don't care to watch TV. It looked good, but I don't have Paramount Plus. So I think it's streaming. I think it's Paramount Plus. Anyway, I don't have the streaming, whatever platform it is that it's running on. But all right, guys, we're going to wrap this one up. Hope you guys have a good rest of your week. We will see you guys next week. And thanks for joining tonight. As always, God bless. We'll see you guys soon.